You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 533, Nothing Human.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Holly Amos, sitting in for Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we examine an episode of Star Trek, picking it apart for its morals, meanings, and messages, and asking ourselves if it stands the test of time.
This week, Nothing Human, the one where the holographic doctor challenges a hologram of a Cardassian about some of his very non-human decisions and then has to make a humane decision of his own. Holly, welcome to the show. As we said last week, Norman is taking some personal time off, and I'm very happy to welcome some people to sit in the co-host chair every now and then and join Mission Log. This is new territory for us because Mission Log traditionally has never had a guest co-host.
Right.
Never.
And you've never recorded a show with somebody sitting next to you.
That's very true. Never a Mission Log like this. Yeah. So here we go. New territory for everybody. And but you know what? The platform, the format, the philosophy behind Mission Log has not changed one bit.
Nope.
And what we do when we get to this segment is you tell people how to reach us.
How to reach you. Okay. Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek, obviously. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on X and Facebook at Mission Log Pod. While you're at it, you can leave us a review and rating at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And please remember, your comments could be used on Mission Log or engage on the Roddenberry YouTube channel. Would you like to tell us some trivia, John?
I would be delighted. I got a little bit of trivia about Nothing Human, and Holly, knowing your background at CBS and your background in fandom, I know you have some additional trivia to supplement what I've got. So
sure.
We will get into that as well. Now, this episode was written by Jeri Taylor, and it is great to see Jeri's name back in the credits. As we know, she left Voyager at the end of the 4th season, but it was intended that she would still be available as a kind of consultant writer. This, though, is her only contribution in Voyager's later years. So we had the potential, like everybody knew about Jeri's talent, wanted her back, but this is really the only official contribution that she's got. Now, the episode was directed by David Livingston, and what can we say? He's on this hot streak right now with Voyager. In fact, we just caught his work last week on Infinite Regress, and he will be back for many, many more episodes. Now, Jeri Taylor and the rest of the producers on the episode were inspired by a real-life story, partially to flesh out our lead antagonist in this episode, and that is the story of Joseph Mengele, who, as most people probably know, was a Nazi doctor, and he was stationed at Auschwitz II, also known as Birkenau, and he performed some absolutely horrendous experimental medical techniques, the details of which are absolutely horrifying and disgusting.
Yeah.
You can read more about it. His name came to light because he escaped. He left before he was able to be tried, presumably at Nuremberg, where other Nazis were tried. He left for South America and moved around quite a bit between Argentina, finally ended up in Brazil, and died in 1979. When it was suspected who he was, his remains were dug up.
Exhumed.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. A little trivia there. Positive identification was made. That is the end of that story. Yes. Yeah. We do have some, lighter. There's no good transition to make here. But there is a bit of lighter on-set history, production history with this one. Kind of a serious story, but it kind of gives you a bit of context about what was going on backstage. And that has to do with our own B'Elanna Torres, played by Roxanne Dawson. What was the story there, Holly?
Oh, well, she didn't have a lot to do in this episode, considering that she was just laying on a table. She had a lot of time to think. She had a lot of time to sort of fall asleep. And unfortunately, her dog passed away the week that they shot this.
Ouch.
And she is still very adamant that this is probably her least favorite episode that they ever shot, because she wasn't distracted by work the way that she usually would have been.
Yeah.
Because she was just laying on a table with her eyes closed and had, this creature on top of her.
Well, look, I bet it would be physically uncomfortable for one thing.
Right.
Because not only do you have this thing on top of you for the whole shooting schedule, but you're also just laying there and pretending to sort of be asleep, kind of slipping in and out of consciousness. That would be difficult as an actor anyway, just to lay there and have nothing to do. And then you have the emotional weight on top of it, of what happened. I think about, do you remember the story about William Shatner making The Devil in the Dark, and he found out that his father had passed away? But the showbiz thing, the show must go on. He finished the day, I believe, maybe even the next day, finished the episode, and then was able to leave and go be with family.
Right. And I mean, fortunately, I don't know if fortunately is the right word in those circumstances, but he had enough to do to maybe be a little bit distracted and get his mind off things. And Roxanne didn't have that.
Yeah.
Shooting this episode.
Although she does have one quite emotional scene at the end, though.
Right.
We can talk about that when we get to it for sure. Now, let's meet our guest stars. We have a Bajoran crewman, Tabor, and he is played by Jad Major. And Jad got his start in the early 90s and appeared on the Oliver Stone film The Doors, along with a variety of TV guest roles, everything from Silk Stockings to Prison Break to Pacific Blue. He even provided voice work for Cowboy Bebop, the movie.
Heck yes. I love Cowboy
You're
Bebop.
A fan? Okay.
Oh, yes.
Particularly of the movie or
of all of it, and even the new Netflix series.
Oh, cool. The live action one.
Yeah, I have a costume of Faye Valentine based on that. Yeah.
Okay, well, there we go. And then we have our Cardassian Dr. Crell Moset, played by David Clennon. And as an actor, he's got a number of high-profile projects on his resume. John Carpenter's The Thing, the 1979 Peter Sellers vehicle Being There, and he was in one of my all-time favorite movies, The Right Stuff, from 1983. His credits are numerous, and no question you've seen him somewhere in something. Interestingly, David has also been known throughout his career for his political activism in real life and extending that to his work by carefully choosing and rejecting roles that align with his own sense of justice. So far, this is his only Star Trek credit.
Welcome to the Delta Quadrant. If you hear a bunch of unearthly screeching, don't worry, that translates to free hugs.
Prologue. The Doctor is in his element, forcing a slideshow of his greatest adventures on a crowd of Voyager's crew who are barely feigning interest. Janeway makes the break, though, and calls the evening over, much to the relief of the others in the room. Tom Paris and B'Elanna head straight to the mess hall for some much-needed coffee and a decompress after the Doctor's ego-driven performance, but everyone is interrupted when Voyager is violently shaken by a massive energy wave. Act 1. After the surge passes and Voyager rights itself, Harry Kim notes that a download came along with the energy wave. It's a screeching tone that doesn't reveal much, but a residual ion trail does give Voyager the chance to follow and come upon a ship clearly in distress. There's a life sign aboard, and Janeway has it beamed directly to sickbay. The alien is definitely a thing in distress. The Doctor can't make much out of the vaguely insectoid creature, which doesn't seem to communicate in a way that is discernible to anyone on Voyager. B'Elanna enters sickbay to report that she's analyzed what she can of its ship and can only determine that the alien somehow interfaces directly with the vessel through secretions and chemical signals. Weird. And just as she turns away, the alien leaps from the biobed through the force field and attaches itself to B'Elanna, where it quickly penetrates her neck and starts overtaking her vital organs. Janeway is ready to shoot it, but the phaser would kill B'Elanna too. Harry can't get a transporter lock on it, and even if he could, half of B'Elanna's organs would beam out with it. That leaves the Doctor feeling inadequate with his knowledge of exobiology to devise a way to extricate the two. With Janeway and Tom's suggestion, they decide to create a secondary hologram, one that can merge all of the computer's knowledge of exobiology into an interactive assistant for the EMH. Harry Kim lends his holography expertise to help render up an historical giant in the field. His name is Crell Moset, and he just happens to be Cardassian. Act 2. Crell Moset is an engaging and charming hologram who doesn't know at first he is a hologram until the EMH clues him in. As for his appearance, well, the Doctor doesn't care that he's based on a Cardassian as long as he can get the job done. And there's no time to lose in that job. They are transferred to sickbay, where Crell immediately makes himself useful with novel tricorder modifications and inspired observations, the kind of thing that might have made him the object of suspicion by Starfleet. Meanwhile, Janeway and Chakotay have made little progress in deciphering the alien language and enlist 7 of 9 to download more from the vessel databanks. She gets on the task from engineering, but is met with a bad attitude from a Bajoran crewman, Tabor, who resents 7 just as B'Elanna has shown little respect for her in the past. They start the download, but as Voyager sends a transceiver signal, the alien vessel explodes. In sickbay, Crell and the Doctor discuss the possibilities of what the alien is doing. Is it attacking B'Elanna? Is it a parasite? Is it in self-preservation mode? Crell needs to study more, and one way to do it is to have his lab recreated in the holodeck so he's got access to all of his scientific equipment. Just as he and the Doctor are discussing their options, B'Elanna wakes up and sees Tom there by the bio bed checking on her. She glances over at the Doctor and is shocked to see a Cardassian who, Tom insists, is just a walking database there to help. To her, the hologram represents a cold-blooded killer. But to Tom, he might just be the only one on board who can save her life. Act 3. Krell's simulated lab is complete, and that gives him and the Doctor the opportunity to talk over his history. He disagreed with the Bajoran occupation. Maybe some of Krell's techniques were unorthodox, but they were the result of his limited resources at the time. The Doctor is in awe of Krell's genius, but they both get to work on a holo-simulation of the alien. Their investigation is enlightening. Crell directs the Doctor with a large scalpel to cut through the alien's body and reveal its multiple cortical nodes. Crell suggests that extreme neuroelectric stimulation to the nodes could cause it to lose motor control and detach from B'Elanna. But as the Doctor points out, that might also kill the alien, and that's not acceptable. Before they can debate the finer points, Krell's program glitches, and the Doctor calls up Harry to meet him in sickbay for a tune-up. Harry brings Tabor with him, and, well, when they get the hologram back online, Tabor is in for quite a shock. He recognizes Crell Moset as the mass murderer who killed his grandfather and brother. Act 4. Krell's hologram is moved to the holodeck to defuse the situation. Later, Tabor explains to Chakotay and the Doctor what he saw, the horrors of Krell's crude experimentation on Bajorans, including his family, in the labor camps. The Doctor can't believe it, but Chakotay knows the stories about an infamous Cardassian doctor. The details aren't in the database, though, and perhaps the real Crell slipped through history unaccountable. B'Elanna takes the news as expected. She refuses to let this Crell, hologram or not, save her life if it means benefiting from the experiments the real Crell used. Her condition worsens. She falls unconscious for now, and the Doctor needs to find direction on how to proceed. Harry and 7 have dug up some more information about the Bajoran labor camps, confirming that the one where Crell was based had requisitioned large quantities of a deadly virus, the one that he used to intentionally infect thousands of Bajorans in order to then come up with a cure. The Doctor confronts him in the holodeck. The holographic Crell has no memory of such events, but even still, the Doctor strongly considers that they may need to delete his program so that Voyager does not benefit from the real Crell Moset's horrific experiments. And in that case, the Doctor would have to try to treat B'Elanna on his own. Crell tries his own version of reason. He was successful, after all, with many of his experiments saving thousands of lives. But at what cost, the Doctor counters? So now he has a choice: delete the Crell Moset program or use its knowledge to save B'Elanna's life. In his quarters, Chakotay is visited by Tabor, who has requested to be relieved of duty. He morally objects to Voyager's medical policy, but Chakotay says the choice isn't that simple. Cut to the briefing room. Janeway has called upon some of her senior staff who are definitely of mixed opinions. On the one hand, if the Doctor uses Krell's techniques as his own, he still benefits from the terrible research that the Cardassian perpetrated. On the other hand, B'Elanna is dying, and Tom is more concerned about that than any other debate. Janeway is the arbitrator. She hears both arguments, but the only concern of hers now is a crew member who needs help. The Doctor is to proceed with Krell's help, and any moral debate can take place later. In the holodeck, the Doctor and Krell begin. Act 5. On the bridge, the high-pitched alien language permeates sensors. With no way to decipher it earlier, Janeway had decided to resend the one they had intercepted earlier in the hope that it would attract more. It did, and here they are, but they don't sound receptive to Janeway's plea for help with their injured comrade. In fact, they start shooting. Just as Krell begins his procedure in the holodeck, the Doctor notices that the stimulation they are applying to the alien's primary cortical node is potentially deadly. Krell wants to increase the jolt, but the Doctor argues that a more humane way would be to apply a lower surge to the secondary cortical node. That works, and the alien begins to withdraw from B'Elanna, but in doing so, its own life signs start failing and it goes into anaphylactic shock. All the while, Voyager takes a beating from the alien vessel and power drains quickly, but the Doctors work together to save the creature and beam it back to the ship just in time, and the alien ship withdraws. B'Elanna will be fine, but now there's the matter of Crell Moset. Keep him or delete him. The Doctor seeks Janeway's counsel, but she leaves the decision up to him. When Janeway checks in with B'Elanna, she's in her quarters, but still a bit, shall we say, irritated at the captain's decision. Still, it was the captain's decision to make, and now she's still got a chief engineer whether B'Elanna likes it or not. The Doctor then visits Krell in the holodeck. The Cardassian is in the mood to celebrate their success, but the Doctor has come to a decision. He tells Krell that his program will be deleted, but not before Krell can challenge the Doctor by asking if he really is so different by allowing his own sense of morality to be bent when the circumstance calls for it. With no more to say in retort, the Doctor deletes the program and all associated medical knowledge from the database. The end. All right, we open up in the holodeck, and the Doctor is giving a presentation, and he's got these heroic pictures of himself. Who took the pictures?
Presumably another member of the crew.
So does he do? So they go on an away mission, and there's some other crew member there, like with a camera. The Doctor's like, no, take a picture of me. I'm gonna pose.
Well, no, it's his. I would say that if he's the one that's obsessed with taking photos, that it's his camera.
Yeah.
But if he wants photos taken of himself, it's like asking a stranger at Disneyland to take a picture of you in front of the castle.
Except it's 140 other crew members, and they all resent him for doing it.
I mean, probably.
Clearly, yeah.
But they'll have those memories, I guess.
That's true.
And he definitely took the picture of Paris. Yes.
So he had to preserve that. And what I love, though, is we finally get to see the results of the holo imager, because I love that prop. I love that giant holo imager. But it's a very 2D image.
Right.
You know, they're just big.
Yes.
So that's what they get. Yeah.
I don't know how many of you know. I'm not a Chakotay fan.
You're not a Chakotay fan?
Not a Chakotay fan.
That's shocking.
Unfortunately, I just think he was very mismanaged from a writer's standpoint. Mm-hmm. But I also think that he's just useless as a character. And unfortunately, he continues to be useless in this episode because he can't even rescue his friends when he is asked.
Nope.
Not just asked. Janeway.
Ordered.
He's ordered. Yeah. Janeway ordered him.
Yeah.
Useless.
Yep. When we get into sickbay and they beam the creature in, I know that I will say this over and over again in this episode, but I love that creature. I love that weird rubber monster thing. It's just, and actually maybe it's not even the design of the creature itself. I just love that it is a practical prop. And
Foam latex.
Yeah. And it's not something we just get a little glimpse of. You go like, oh, look, they just dashed into there. Like, no, we get a lot of view of this thing throughout the episode.
I'm wondering how that thing jumped through the force field.
Alien powers.
That's not clear. It's not clear.
We know that it's got like a weird chemical sensory thing that it can do with its own interface in its ship. So maybe it
can bypass
this
force fields.
Hey, if 7 of 9 could walk through it, then maybe this thing can fly through it the way it can.
All right.
Gotta ask you, Harry is going to program this new hologram. Didn't we already establish that he is terrible at making holograms? Because the one other time that he tried to make like a backup for the Doctor, he failed at that. And that already exists.
Sure, but it's not like they can call in a specialist. They don't have any other... They have the people on the ship and that's it.
True.
And Harry Kim needed something to do.
He did. I do like, okay, the Doctor says, I don't care if he's the nastiest man who ever lived. And the Doctor does have a point. But then I wondered at any point, did they look at him and just think like, we could make him look different given B'Elanna's history. We could say like, here's the knowledge of this person, but we could make him look like a friendly Bolian. Well, and nobody would know the difference.
You could have done that, but you just said that Harry Kim is bad at
Harry Kim is bad at this. But wait. But Harry Kim might be bad at it, but apparently his expertise just amounts to knowing what prompts to put into like Chat GPT. Think about it. He just goes to the console. He's in the holodeck. He's like, bring up the database and make it for me, computer.
Promoted.
And it does. Well, the Doctor could have done that. The Doctor could have gone down there and like read a whole litany of things like, this is the biography of Crell Moset, and here's what he does, and here's what he looks like, and blah, blah, blah. And then the computer would make it. Harry, I'm saying, is not very good at this. The only person who does any editing of that program is Tabor, right? Is it Tabor or Tom? Later when they're in sickbay, and you're actually looking at the code that makes him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Harry does nothing except write the prompt.
All right, well, then I guess Harry's useless too. I really like Hollow Crell because at the beginning, I feel like, you said that he was sort of, he's kind of an endearing dude.
Yeah,
and
he's got a great personality.
He's confident, but he's not cocky.
Not like the Doctor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was kind of refreshing.
But it was refreshing, and you'd kind of want this guy around, but then he got worse the more he learned about himself.
Yes.
But he only learned those things because of what Voyager dug up about him.
Correct.
So you could have, in theory, just let him be.
Yes. And
that would have been it. That would have been the end of it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. All right. Just checking there. I do like the Doctor's. I'm between names. That was a good little bit with him. The other kind of charmingly interesting thing about Crell Moset is that he does not know he's a hologram.
Not at first.
Not at first, until he is told that he's a hologram, but it doesn't really faze him.
No.
He's just like, oh, okay, we'll carry on.
What is he going to do? Moriarty it? Like...
He could. Maybe. Now, it's interesting that the captain left 7 in charge of engineering during B'Elanna's absence. Why?
Who would you have put in charge?
Anybody else who works in engineering? What happened to the guy that B'Elanna punched in the face? Remember him back from season 1? Mm-hmm. He's probably around somewhere. Baxter's probably in the gym working out. You could go just interrupt him for a little bit.
Presumably. It's not like anybody can get transferred to another ship. No.
But there are people around who work in engineering, and I'm sure that they would all be good at it. The thing is, look, I'm a big fan of 7 of 9. She is incredibly capable. Her skills, definitely in astrometrics. She should be, doing her work there, I would think, not necessarily keeping the ship running.
Fair.
Right?
I guess.
Yeah. To say, again, like, give her something to do.
Well, sure, from a script standpoint.
Yeah. You could have done that in astrometrics.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. But Tabor is a jerk about it.
But also remember.
Wait.
Okay. Go back to the 7 thing. Also remember, this is also a piece of trivia that we didn't mention at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
But this story actually started as a pitch for Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
So they're having to reassign each role now to Voyager people.
True.
That might be why.
It might be. I think you could have said, hey, 7 of 9, go work in astrometrics on decoding this thing. You're going to need help. So we're assigning to you, well, Harry's working on the hologram that he's super good at.
Who do you think was working on the hologram? Probably Chief, right?
Could be.
Probably Chief.
Yeah. Although, wait a minute, for DS9, didn't necessarily have to be a hologram. Could have been the real guy.
It could have been the real guy.
Yeah. All right, what could have been? But yeah, Tabor, he's a jerk about the whole thing, but I guess we have to foreshadow that he has strong feelings about things,
Right. I mean, you could argue that maybe he didn't express himself appropriately or professionally, but I understand where he's coming from.
I do too, but it's kind of a bad management thing, though. The problem is, though, we can easily blame Tabor's bad behavior on B'Elanna, because that stuff starts at the top and rolls downhill. If B'Elanna had been respectful and put her guy in line and said, hey, you know what, when I'm not here, you respect the people who you're working for. And by the way, I might not get along with Seven, but she is my crewmate, and I am part of this crew, and I need to work with her. So Janeway needs to get B'Elanna in line. So then B'Elanna can get Tabor in line. It's just,
Trickle down.
Yeah, exactly. I do like this conversation that the Doctor and Crell have. Awards aren't important. It's the work that matters. This is such a good scene for all the things that are not being said, because I love how Crell talks about disagreeing with the occupation, but it's not revealed why, other than he says it was a drain on resources,
Correct.
blah, 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 and that he had to consider solutions he never would have thought possible under normal circumstances. Like, those could all be interpreted as heroic things that are on the right side of history. If he says, I don't agree with what happened there, what he meant was, politically it was wrong, it was morally wrong for us to invade Bajor, but you go back and rewatch it again and you go like, oh no, wait, maybe the thing that he disagreed with is like, oh, it just cost the Cardassians too much.
It's a question of motivation.
Yeah.
Like, why did he think that it was wrong? And is that morally
right,
acceptable or questionable?
Yeah, but that's one of those scenes, and I love it when Star Trek can drop a scene that's really good on its own, and then you get to the end of the episode, you rewatch it, and you go like, oh,
that took a different meaning.
Yeah. And that was a nice way to do that. I do like calling out the crude instrument, the scalpel. I mean, it looks like a freaking medieval torture device. Yeah, that is scary. I did wonder, though, how does the holodeck know how the alien would respond to pain or stimulation?
You mean the computer system itself?
Yeah, because the computer created a hologram version of the creature.
Which we've never seen before. And don't understand the physiology.
Right. And if you tell me that the computer, through some kind of transporter technology, is sort of, molecule by molecule recreates that thing in the holodeck, okay, cool. That's a cool way to say that. But at that point, the computer could just tell you how it would respond. You could just ask the computer, hey, what would happen if we did this?
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's having the alien to react possibly off of assumptions as to how most beings that we know of would react if they were getting stabbed.
Yeah. Boy, that's a hard one to figure out. You need a computer to do that.
Does it have a central nervous system?
Well, that's all you need to know.
Well,
that's it. But you have to have the most sophisticated computer in the world to tell you it's going to scream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's good to finally see Tom Paris acting like an assistant in sickbay as he was always meant to be.
Sure, but
not whining about it.
Well, I mean, clearly he's not whining about it because he's trying to save his partner's life. They're not married at this point, but they're together.
Yeah.
I mean, but again, and I argue this a lot, like, how close should he be to this situation before you consider him to be, like, emotionally compromised?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. He shouldn't be working. I love the scene where he's there to comfort her early. Mm-hmm. I love the scene that we'll get to in the conference room when he's arguing his point. He's great in that. I want to call out something that 7 of 9 does here and get your reaction on it. She has this line that she says to the Doctor, "It is curious, the Borg are accused of assimilating information with no regard for life. This Cardassian," meaning Crell, did the same, and yet his behavior is tolerated. But I think she's being a little sanctimonious because it's not being tolerated. The crew, in real time, they're learning about him and trying to solve the problem.
Right. They're not just hero worshipping him without...
I mean, the Doctor kind of is.
At the beginning, until he starts to learn about what this guy did.
Yeah. But I feel like Seven's reaction, of course, she's been reactionary to things in the past, but I feel like it's a little misplaced. And then Crell confronts the Doctor, is that half the medical knowledge acquired on Earth came through experiments on lower animals. And the Doctor says, but not people. I'm like, what?
Incorrect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the place where you need to cut and paste the line that he says, like, however he phrases it, that was hundreds of years ago. We're better than that now, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we don't even, he could have even taken that further and been like, at some point we stopped testing, a lot of, hopefully we get to a point where we're not testing on animals anymore.
Right.
But, a lot of brands, beauty brands and stuff like that take pride in not testing on animals anymore. So at some point, presumably, our species might not be testing on anything.
One would hope.
One would hope by the time this happens.
Because you could do it all in a computer simulation.
Correct.
And let the computer tell you that the animal will scream. I said how much I love Rubber Monster. The internal workings of this thing are just great. And we don't get a lot of Janeway in this episode, but I think she is used very well. And damn, I love her scene at the end with B'Elanna. You remember those scenes where, like, Janeway would say stuff early on, like, dismiss that Starfleet for get out?
Correct.
This moment that Janeway has, this is her putting B'Elanna in her place, and I love it. I'm the captain, you're my crewman, I did what I thought best. I get the feeling there are still a few demons in the air. Let's hope this does the trick.
Mm-hmm.
Mic drop moment.
Yes.
Good job, Captain. I love it. And let me pose this question to you and our audience. So the Doctor deleted Krell's work from the database, right? But doesn't the Doctor's program remember what he just did?
Doesn't everybody remember what he just did?
Everybody. Like, the Doctor literally did it and probably told a bunch of people what he was doing and how this was going to go down. So can you ever actually destroy the knowledge in that sense? I don't think you can.
You could, in theory, delete the Doctor's memories too, because he's also a holo program. But there was enough people on the ship, mostly the senior staff, that knew how it came to be that they saved B'Elanna's life. So from that standpoint, no, unless you got like a Men in Black eraser.
Don't give them any ideas.
The fact that everyone's okay with a Doctor whose tools look like instruments of torture proves that no one on this ship has ever watched a single horror movie.
We'll get right back to Nothing Human after a word from this week's sponsors.
Hey, I've got a question for you, a hypothetical that you might be able to relate to. Have you ever felt like Netflix is kind of like the Romulan cloaking device? It's hiding all the good stuff from you based on your location. It's like they're raising their shields and blocking you from all the amazing shows and movies out there. You know what I mean? And then they have the audacity to keep raising their prices on us, but there's a way to outsmart them and get your money's worth. Just like your favorite captain would do. I can think of two, at least offhand, who would do it. And that's by using ExpressVPN.
Okay, so here's the deal. Netflix and other streaming services hide content based on your location. But with ExpressVPN, you can change your online location and make Netflix think you're somewhere else. They have servers in over 100 countries, so you can unlock thousands of new shows and movies. Plus, it works with other streaming services like Disney+, BBC iPlayer, my personal favorite, and more. You will never run out of stuff to watch.
Oh, you mentioned iPlayer. I love that too. And the best part is that ExpressVPN is so easy to use. You just fire up the app, you click one button. I believe in all of us to do that, and that changes your location. It's like beaming yourself directly to another country. It works on all of your devices too, phones, laptops, tablets, smart TV, you name it. I've been using ExpressVPN for a long time, like Earl just mentioned with BBC iPlayer, but turn the channel over to Netflix. Catch up on shows like Doctor Who. Yeah, that other major franchise of science fiction that we love. And all I had to do is just open up ExpressVPN, select UK, tap one button to connect, refresh Netflix, boom, there it is.
And the speeds, you should know, are amazing. You can stream in HD with zero buffering. No more waiting for that buffering circle to disappear while you're in the middle of a cliffhanger. I hate beach balling, man.
Nobody loves the beach ball. Everybody hates it. ExpressVPN is also top rated by tech experts like CNET and The Verge, and it keeps you private and secure by rerouting your traffic through an encrypted tunnel.
So be smart. Stop paying full price for streaming services and only getting access to a fraction of their content. Get your money's worth at expressvpn.com/missionlog. Don't forget to use our link at expressvpn.com/missionlog to get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free.
That's expressvpn.com/missionlog. Live long and watch more. All right, everybody, listen up. We've got some urgent and exciting news from our friends at Master Replicas.
That's right. Master Replicas signed a deal to take over the Eaglemoss stock and became the exclusive distributor of the official Star Trek Starships collection. But here's the catch. That deal ends on June 15th. That's really close. We are in the final days, so if you have been dreaming of adding some of those iconic ships to your collection, now is most assuredly the time to act.
I literally, from the day of this recording, you have days left. That's it. Now, Master Replicas has always been the go-to place for Star Trek ships, but things are about to change. And they are running some incredible promotions right now, and these deals are too good to miss.
There are deals on ships from Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Enterprise, and the modern era of Star Trek on Paramount+, including Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, and more. Whether you're looking for the iconic USS Enterprise NCC-1701 from the Constitution-class refit, or the stunning USS Kelvin from the Kelvin timeline, there is something for every fan.
You know, Earl, it's kind of funny because off script and offline, I showed you what I got, and I went a little like space station crazy. I had to get the K7 space station. I got Regular One, which, by the way, you turn it upside down, and it's the station from the motion picture. And then, just to be the iconoclast that I am, I bought the original Galactica. That now sits proudly on my desk at Roddenberry. And I did it all because there is a special treat that I used exclusively for Mission Log listeners. If you use the code MissionLog at checkout at masterreplicas.com, you get an extra 10% off your purchase. That's right, it's just for you, just for Mission Log listeners, an extra 10% off.
Plus, this is not the end of Star Trek for Master Replicas. They have signed new contracts, and they are negotiating more. We've heard some whispers about exciting new plans in the works. I personally love my Moopsie. We can't share details just yet, but we know they've got some cool stuff coming.
I know, they would take our badges away if we shared all the new stuff, but rest assured there is absolutely great stuff coming. So make sure you stay in touch with Master Replicas, and don't wait. Head over to masterreplicas.com, use the code MissionLog, and complete your collection before this deal ends on June 15th. The clock is ticking, and once these ships are gone, they are gone for good. You don't want to pay 3 times the amount on eBay.
Absolutely not. But do keep an eye out, because Master Replicas is working on more fantastic products for other beloved franchises like Stargate, Foundation, Blade Runner, Dune, and Doctor Who. They are dedicated to bringing the best to true fans.
Master Replicas have always delivered top-quality replicas, and now is your chance to grab these Star Trek ships before they're gone forever. MasterReplicas.com, and don't forget to use our code MissionLog for that exclusive 10% discount.
Remember, the clock is ticking. Head over to masterreplicas.com now. You have mere days left. Use the code MissionLog to get that extra 10% off and take advantage of these incredible deals. And happy collecting.
So what I think Voyager does really well with moral and ethical controversies is that they help you understand and empathize with both sides of the argument. And I think that, obviously Tuvix is a really good example of that, because I still, to this day, I'm like, I don't know what the right decision would have been.
That's, okay, perfectly said, because...
there are people that are very much pro either side.
Sure.
And I'm like, I understand both sides of the controversy.
Yeah.
And if I had been Janeway, I don't know if I would have been able to make the decision that she made.
Yeah.
And in this scenario, this is also a really hard decision to make when you are potentially gaining knowledge for somebody who did horrible things and also potentially building on that.
Right. But here's the thing. I think the beauty of an episode like Tuvix, which y'all can go back and listen to that episode of Mission Log, there is no right answer. It's the Kobayashi Maru. It's
Correct.
the test of character.
Yes.
That's it. And we get to debate it endlessly. I'm going to say, though, because, that's really the bulk of my notes here. There's some fun things in here, too. But that's the bulk of my notes as well, like yours. Like, how do we parse this moral, ethical dilemma? And we have to look at everybody and ask ourselves, like, who's actually right here? Is there anybody who's in the wrong? I would almost venture to say there's nobody truly wrong.
No.
And that's what makes it a great ethical, moral debate, is that all the sides are justifiable.
Correct.
I think Janeway's right.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Here's why. I think that the knowledge has already been gained, and that's why I kind of planted this seed in the last segment. No matter what, like, try to burn the books, try to delete the programs, try to tell people don't think about this thing. And what you're doing is you're creating an environment where people think about the thing.
It's like saying don't think of the pink elephant.
Yeah, you're going to think of the pink elephant. And now, not only do you have one person who figured out this technique through the worst means possible, but now you have multiple people who know about the technique, who studied the technique, who used it in a practical application. And that's why I asked, like, okay, remember several episodes ago, the Doctor wanted to erase the part of him that tried to be a counselor to Seven of Nine, and in doing so brought up a false memory.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and Janeway said, no. You can't delete that. You can't just walk away from it. You did it. You have that knowledge. That is part of your program now. I would argue same thing here. So even if you say to the computer, hey, don't use Crell Moset's techniques, well, the technique may get discovered some other way someday. At least you've got a basis to work from. And I think the most important thing here is just acknowledging the source of the knowledge. I think the worst thing that you could do is try to whitewash the history of this thing by pretending it didn't happen. I think you have to acknowledge and understand it did happen. How did it happen? Where did it happen? Is there one thing that came out of it that saves somebody's life? In this case, yes. But I think the more you try to whitewash it, the more you run into the potential that somebody could stumble into the same thing with the same awful intentions as somebody like Crell Moset. Mm-hmm. The only way to prevent against the lessons hard learned from history is to study the history. This smacks of like a weird kind of censorship to me. So
you think that Janeway made the correct decision, and then she left the decision as to whether or not to delete the program to the Doctor. Do you think the Doctor made the right decision?
I don't think he did. I don't think he did. I think Janeway made the right decision to say, do this, because we're going to save our friend, our crewmate. This is what's necessary now.
Let's say that they get back to, I mean, this is obviously something that would have happened way into the future, but that's a blind spot for us, but they get back to the Alpha Quadrant. They get back to Earth.
Yeah.
And there's studies done and investigations done about how they survived out there and how they got back and all that. Let's say that somebody in Starfleet found out that they had used that research. Do you think they would have been held accountable in terms of like being put on trial or something like that?
Maybe. But to be fair, remember they pulled the knowledge from the database, and the database also had a huge blind spot, which was nothing about the Bajoran, the actual Bajoran experiments, right?
Yeah.
It was solely that here is a person who existed, who figured out these things in exobiology, and that's it. So by the time they had already gotten the ball rolling on what they were going to do, that was the set of knowledge that they had. They had already opened up that box.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different thing than if they had started out, opened up a history book and said, wow, this person did horrible things. Let's recreate him.
Right. So you're saying that it's acceptable because they use his knowledge to do good versus to do evil, which is arguably what he was doing.
Yeah, because I think the knowledge, the technique exists. It is just a thing. It is a tool that exists. And somebody can use it in an ethical way, like the doctor, because he had to learn. He had to learn what was wrong in order to learn what was right, as opposed to just saying like, oh, okay, well, we have to discount. We have to create this deleted space in history and jump over it. Now, granted, maybe the doctor could have figured out something else. I don't deny that. He's a smart dude. But I feel like particularly in this case, the morality of the situation is a bit gray. Mm-hmm. They needed to save B'Elanna and go to every heroic effort to do so. What do you think?
I mean, I probably would side with that. I would probably agree with you that I can't imagine a scenario in which Janeway would have just been like, let's just let her die.
Right. Okay, but then we get to the next step of it, which is the doctor deciding to delete this program. And that's where maybe it's not a bigger problem. Maybe it is a bigger problem. Like, I don't have a problem with Janeway saying, do this, solve the problem. But for the doctor to decide, I'm going to create a gap in history by just wiping out where this medical knowledge came from. And I assume the knowledge that comes along with it, I think that's a real issue.
But let me pose this question, though,
okay,
too, because we've seen what happens because of Moriarty. We've seen what happens when a hologram gains sentience.
Sure.
And when we start off with Moset, like, he's cute and kind of unaware of what's going on, and then he starts to learn stuff about himself as the crew gets tidbits of information.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of information in Starfleet stuff, apparently. And so they're getting this information. They're telling it to him. And he's getting, as he progresses, I could see how he would become a lot more self-aware and potentially get into a scenario in which he gained sentience enough to cause havoc, because the real man was actually fairly evil.
Oh, yeah.
Arguably.
Yeah.
So my thought process is that potentially the doctor made that decision so that the hologram itself couldn't progress more fully and develop into the real guy.
So I get that. I get the idea of like, okay, kill the personality program, that's why I kind of asked earlier on, what about Harry Kim in his poor understanding of how to program holograms, right? Instead of making him look like a Cardassian, can you take the knowledge and park that somewhere else? And I feel like the doctor is throwing out the baby with the bathwater here. It is a necessary technique. Now we understand that developing the technique came from all the wrong places. Like, I cannot emphasize this enough to people who are listening who think that I'm trying to like
champion,
champion to use a phrase, the way that this knowledge was gained. I am not at all, but let's draw some parallels. You talked about animal testing earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, there are things today that save lives that came from animal testing.
Yeah.
People who take insulin now, which is a very necessary thing to keep many, many people alive, came from experimentation on other creatures.
I mean, yes, correct. Yeah. Because, I mean, specifically pigs in a lot of ways are, like, their bodies are set up really, really similar to humans.
Yeah.
And a lot of testing that was done on them has gained us knowledge to save lives.
And I think what Crell poses here is a very interesting, debatable point. Like, you feel differently about lower, quote-unquote, animals than you do about others. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But if we were to get to that point to say, like, well, wait a minute, there is an ethical question about testing on animals. If we recognize that and we say, you know what, in the 21st century, we can do these things on a computer. We can do these things in a safer, more ethical way that does not impede animals. Great. But guess what? In the last 100 years, we also made these strides in keeping people alive because we also did animal testing. I think it would be a wrong thing to do to just throw that out and say, like, well, the research doesn't count anymore because it was done in a way that makes us uneasy now.
So do you think that just the self-awareness that it was questionable ethically is enough to sort of let us off the hook?
It doesn't let us off the hook. I think that over and over again, we have to learn from that thing and we have to acknowledge what it is. Like, I get nervous when it sounds like, well, just not ignore the history, but completely throw out the history because all of that is bad. Everything that Crell Moset did was terrible. There is a kernel of knowledge there, though, that is very necessary in this case. And my worry is that you paint yourself into an even more dangerous corner by pretending like it's not there.
Well, I mean, there's also an argument to be made about history in general, from the standpoint of those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
So throwing away anything that they learned about him by way of that, I don't think that it would have behooved them from that standpoint. You have to learn from the historical context. Yeah. And if they delete it, then how is anybody going to be able to do that in the future?
That's where I definitely part ways with the doctor's decision. I think in this sort of compassionate, reactionary way, I think we can all understand his intention there. And certainly Tabor, we can understand where he's coming from. B'Elanna, we can understand where she's coming from. At the same time, though, this happened in the reality of the universe of Voyager. This is a thing that happened and people benefited from it. And it's a bit disingenuous to say, like, oh, no, it didn't. We're just going to wipe that out and pretend like it's not there. Because eventually, when they get back home and Starfleet reads the logs of the USS Voyager and says, wait, hang on, wait a minute.
Where did this come from?
Yeah. Then you have even more questions to answer.
Well, let me ask you another question that is a lesser, it's lesser of a dilemma.
Okay.
But a dilemma nonetheless.
Okay.
Who has the right to make the decision for B'Elanna when she's unconscious medically? Ooh. Because, if you're here on Earth in this time right now, the people that make medical decisions for you if you're incapacitated would be
insurance companies.
Well, sure. But in theory, it should be, if you're younger, your parents, if you're married, your spouse, if you're older, then maybe your children,
right,
or somebody that you actually name, power of attorney. Yeah. In this scenario, when they're out in the middle of space and B'Elanna doesn't have any family, is it the captain? Is it Tom, who she's dating, for lack of a better way to put it? but not married to yet. They don't get married until, much later.
Right. What?
Whoops.
That's, I would love to know from some of our listeners who are in or were in the military, because this is the closest parallel that we have. Like, in this case, would it be the captain? And I guess that's where the show comes down and says the captain gets to decide. But fortunately, in this case, the captain and Tom have the same point of view.
Right. But if they didn't, were married,
then I would think that Tom...
Who trumps who?
Yeah, I would think that Tom would, probably. That's a good question. I don't know. That's an interesting thought. There are so many things to pick apart and discuss here. I'm going to skip my whole thing about the hologram, not knowing that it's a hologram, because we touched on that before. Although I do think it's kind of interesting what happens when you tell a being that it is a hologram. Does it give them like an existential pause?
It would give me an existential crisis, but that is because I have existential crisis a lot. Regardless,
whether you're a hologram or not. Right. It is interesting that we talked in the trivia a little bit about the real world parallel here, Joseph Mengele, and I like it when Star Trek does this thing where they use an alien species as a stand-in for human traits. Like, Vulcans are logical. Sometimes humans should be more logical. Sometimes they shouldn't be more logical. Like, it's an interesting mirror to hold up to us. And then sometimes you have alien species as like a stand-in for a system. Like, you have the warrior class of Klingons. Or in this case, you have Cardassians, just straight up historical parallel to one system, especially the Nazi regime. But I will say that from DS9, that has really worked for me, as heavy-handed as it is, as a storytelling thing, because I think we've learned so much about Cardassians along the way, and kind of their extremes and their systems like propaganda and organization and subterfuge and their loyalty or lack thereof sometimes, and like the cracks that form within that. So I think it was an excellent choice to just go ahead and commit to it and have a Cardassian here, whether that came from DS9, as the original intention. I can't think of anybody else you could really effectively put here and tell the same kind of story.
Yeah.
I think it works very well. I think that if we weren't pressed for time, I would really get into the question here about B'Elanna's bias, because I wonder, now, again, B'Elanna has the right to her emotional reaction of what she sees. Like that moment she turns and, what's that Cardassian doing here? Mm-hmm. She's been through her experiences, But she says, as far as I'm concerned, he's a cold-blooded killer. That was before she knew that he was Crell Moset.
Yes.
The only person who ID'd him was Tabor. There is a possibility that this story plays out in a way that Tabor never enters that room, and he has no idea what's happening in sickbay. And Crell Moset is just still some Cardassian hologram doctor, and B'Elanna never puts two and two together because she just doesn't, because she doesn't know much about the specifics of the Bajoran labor camps.
Yes.
That just might be a thing she doesn't know. I guess what I'm asking here, like, does she show a bit too much bias? Is it because of just the image of the Cardassian? Is there bias because this is a hologram? I mean, certainly she lets the doctor do his thing, So is she not exercising a little bit of, accepting people for the role that they play as opposed to the baggage that she brings with it? Or do we give her a pass because it's B'Elanna and she was in the Maquis and she's seen it all?
Right. I mean, I would say you could argue she's a bit reactionary, but I feel like in some cases you have to give people the benefit of the doubt given their past experiences.
Yeah.
Especially if the people around you are aware of those past experiences. It would be one thing for her to be judged if her crewmates didn't know her experience.
Right.
And questioned the way that she reacted, and then she would come out and explain, this was my experience, and then it would be understood a little bit more. So, I mean, you could argue it both ways. I think that she was very reactionary, but I also think that it's justified.
Despite all the gaps in Starfleet's records, somehow the holodeck knew that this guy speaks fluent flattery. That's weirdly impressive.
Okay, Holly, thank you for discussing the ins and outs of Nothing Human with me this week. As we do on every episode of Mission Log, we get to the end and we ask ourselves if the episode holds up. And that might just be a very subjective question that you can answer in any way with whatever criteria you feel is appropriate. And then we're going to dig into morals, meanings, messages, or what we took away from the episode. So at first I will ask you, does Nothing Human hold up?
I absolutely think that it holds up from the ethical conundrum standpoint. I don't think that, given how many years it's been since this episode originally aired, that I thought about it any differently.
Interesting. So when you first watched it,
How old was I when I first watched it? I believe I was in middle school when I watched this, so I was preteen, teen, early teen.
Wait, and were you hit by the same, like, wow, this is an interesting ethical dilemma? Were you thinking,
oh, yeah,
those lines? Okay, all right.
Yeah, I feel like I had less of a reaction to this than I did with Tuvix, but I do remember watching Tuvix and being like, I don't know what the answer is.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Very cool.
So I don't think that I've really changed my reaction or my opinion, which makes me fully say that this stands up.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah, just as a piece of storytelling, then it holds up. And I think that's a very fair criteria to use. I think for people who watch this, your mileage may vary with your love of the rubber creature.
Well, advancements in makeup.
I know, but look, I would kind of hate to see this as a CGI blob. You know, like the...
I wasn't even thinking that. I was just thinking a different material.
Oh, I'm thinking like the macrovirus episode.
I was thinking silicone would have looked better.
Sure. But still...
You're thinking CGI.
Yeah, because that's the other way. I'm sure that they tested it that way because it is a CG model that goes through the force field.
Correct.
And then we get back to, for the rest of the show,
I mean, how would you operate, like, the fact that it is an actual, tangible thing that they were, like, cutting open?
I love it.
I don't know if you would be able to do that well with CGI, even today.
I think now you could, but I think it would still lack the weight and dimension that this one has.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's goofy, but I love it. You know? I mean, it's sort of a throwback to like retro sci-fi. You know, see also The Outer Limits or Space 1999 or any number of 1950s alien monster movies. Yeah. But the trick to any of those is that the actors have to sell it, and they do here.
Yes.
Because your eyes are just glued to this debate, this ongoing thing between the Doctor and Crell. That is the story. That is the heart of this whole thing. And if they didn't sell it, then you wouldn't buy it with the rubber monster. You'd just be like, okay, let's fast forward and get through the rubber monster episode, you know? But you're saying the thing that kept you interested in this was the ethics.
The ethical,
story,
moral conundrum.
You know? I just think that this is another time that Voyager is doing what it does very well. And on the bigger picture, it's science fiction doing what science fiction can do very well. Maybe the parallels here are a little too obvious, a little too ripped from history, but those moral, ethical ideas run deep, and they are always worth considering. Like, that is always a story worth telling. So to me, it's just, you know, well done on all counts. It's engaging drama. It is superbly well written. I love that you can get across a deep idea in just the shortest bit of dialogue, which they do multiple times in this episode. And a real shout out to our primary guest star, David Clennon, who is wonderful, not only embodying this character, but I kind of wondered, like, how much DS9 had he watched? Because you think about fitting him along with, like, Gul Dukat and Garak and Damar even. just in this pantheon of great Cardassian characters, this guy just slips right into it, like he was always there. And he's great.
I think that he and Bob Picardo played well off of each other too.
Absolutely. Yeah, because they both kind of like, they matched each other's energy.
Yes.
But they were still like feeling each other out. I mean, everything with them was great. They're so good. So good. And I guess that brings us to, well, the serious part, the very serious part, the morals, meanings, messages. What did you pull from this?
I mean, the ethical conundrum. What is the right decision to make?
Yeah.
Do we want to continue to benefit from this person's horrible work? Is it okay in this circumstance to do that, to save a person's life? I would argue probably yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did argue, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious to hear what our listeners have to say about that, because I think there is a lot more to mine from it.
I would be curious to see if any of the listeners would tend to just think that B'Elanna should have been left to die.
Let's talk about that. There are other ways to tell this story. There's the way that you honor what she says, which is, I don't want to have anything to do with him or his knowledge. And maybe she dies in the process.
Do you think she would have been okay with that?
Yes. If that's saying what she wants and the doctor does everything that he can without Crell, so be it. There's another way to tell this, which is that she expresses that the doctor does everything he can, and then he comes up with a novel solution to resolve this. And then he gets to be the hero, as he depicted himself at the beginning, who could come up with ways to get out of these situations.
Do you think I feel like they used the research that they used because they were maybe up against a clock and they didn't know how long B'Elanna had. But do you think that without the research, if they hadn't discovered that, do you think the doctor would have been able to solve the problem?
Because it's Voyager, and because the holographic doctor is so good, and because B'Elanna is in the top credits of the show, then yes. However, you could treat this episode kind of in a vacuum, and I think if he didn't, like, we're kind of back to the Tuvix question. It's like, okay, you take action and somebody dies, but okay, you protected your sense of morality by doing that. So now how do you feel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. I think this episode is about asking the difficult questions. It's about kind of playing out this what would you do, and it is, again, a test of character.
So it's a question that doesn't have an answer, really. It doesn't have a correct answer.
Right. It only has the moral debatable point in which we said, all sides are justified here, but it really is a question about the individual character. What do you do? Yeah. Totally agree. I do think that there are a couple of other things worth pointing out here. The doctor engages in this bit of hero worship at first, which is interesting to watch. He can't or he won't see the truth about Krell's past because he just wants to be in the presence of another great medical mind who is also stroking his ego at the same time. So there's a bit of a lesson there about not being blinded maybe by the famous or being blinded by what you want to be true. The doctor's been down that path before a little bit. But then, I asked myself, like, what should we take away from the central ethical question of the episode? And I'm not always 100% sure, other than just you have to work through the ethical questions on an individual basis. Make good decisions in your research. Learn from history so you don't repeat it. That's why I'm so disturbed at the idea of deleting history. And try to make better decisions for the future so others can learn from you. I think that's maybe the critical piece that's missing here. Had the information stayed intact, then the doctor is the one who gets to say, this is what's wrong with this history. Now, here's how we make it right going forward. So I maybe that was a piece of the nuance of the discussion that didn't happen here. But I want to come back to this line, though, that I thought was really interesting in the episode. It's what Crell Moset says to the Doctor: ethics, morality, conscience. Funny how they all go out the airlock when we need something. I like that Crell put the Doctor a bit in his place by reminding him to acknowledge that we sometimes make bad or questionable decisions, but most importantly, we get to learn from them and make better decisions the next time.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you would like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and for more Star Trek news and discussions, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, 30 days.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Shadwell, Paul Shadwell, and David Takechi. I'm starting to think that the next time someone in this quadrant transmits a message about free hugs, Voyager should just ignore it and keep going. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.